Welcome to the hunting hour. Eli Mercer had always been drawn to the unknown. As a journalist, he thrived on uncovering secrets and exposing truths. But nothing could have prepared him for what awaited in Black Hollow. The town, nestled deep within the dense forest, had an eerie reputation. Stories of mysterious disappearances and haunted legends were whispered among those who dared to speak of it. Eli arrived in Black Hollow on a chilly autumn evening. The air was thick with fog, and the town seemed frozen in time. Old, creaky buildings lined the streets, their windows dark and uninviting. As he drove through the town, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. His destination was the Black Hollow Motel, a run-down establishment that looked like it hadn't seen a guest in years. The neon sign flickered intermittently, casting an eerie glow on the surrounding area. Eli parked his car and stepped out, his breath visible in the cold air. The motel's lobby was dimly lit, and the receptionist, an elderly woman with a stern expression, handed him the key to his room without a word. Eli made his way to room 13, the number adding to the sense of foreboding that had settled over him. Inside the room, Eli found an old diary on the nightstand. The cover was worn, and the pages yellowed with age. Curiosity piqued, he opened it and began to read. The diary belonged to someone named Sarah, who had vanished years ago. Her entries were filled with fear and desperation, detailing strange occurrences and ominous warnings. The final entry sent chills down Eli's spine. They come at midnight. Don't listen to the whispers. As the clock neared midnight, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He sat on the edge of the bed, the diary clutched in his hands, and waited. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the old building. Then, just as the clock struck 12, Eli heard it. Whispers. Soft, indistinct voices seemed to come from all around him. He strained to hear, but the words were elusive, slipping through his grasp like smoke. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and Eli felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. He stood up, his heart pounding in his chest, and moved to the window. The fog outside had thickened, and shadows seemed to dance just beyond the glass. Eli's breath caught in his throat as he saw a figure standing in the fog, watching him. The whispers grew louder still, and Eli felt a sense of dread wash over him. He backed away from the window, his mind racing. Determined to uncover the truth, Eli decided to venture into the forest the next day. The locals had been tight-lipped, but he was certain that the answers lay hidden among the trees. As he lay in bed, the whispers continued, lulling him into a restless sleep filled with nightmares. The next morning, Eli awoke with a sense of purpose. He packed his bag and set out for the forest, the diary tucked safely inside. The path was overgrown and treacherous, but Eli pressed on, driven by the need to uncover the truth. As he ventured deeper into the woods, the air grew colder, and the trees seemed to close in around him. Eli's footsteps echoed in the silence, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being followed. He glanced over his shoulder but saw nothing. Hours passed, and Eli finally stumbled upon a hidden cabin. The door was ajar, and he could see strange symbols carved into the walls. He stepped inside, his heart pounding, and found a tape recorder on the table. He pressed play, and a child's voice filled the room. "You found me." Eli's blood ran cold. The voice was haunting, filled with a sense of sorrow and longing. He listened intently, hoping for more clues, but the tape ended abruptly. As he turned to leave, the recorder started playing again, this time with his own voice. Panic set in, and Eli fled the cabin, his mind racing. What was happening? How had his voice ended up on the tape? The forest seemed to close in around him, and he struggled to find his way back to the town. When he finally emerged from the woods, Eli was exhausted and shaken. He returned to the motel, desperate for answers. The diary had warned him, but he hadn't listened. Now he was caught in a web of mystery and danger, and he knew he had to find out more about the town's dark past. As the sun set, Eli sat in his room, the diary open before him. He read through the entries again, searching for any clues he might have missed. The whispers had returned, but he was determined to ignore them. He had to stay focused if he was going to uncover the truth. Eli's investigation had only just begun, and he knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges and dangers. But he was ready. He would uncover the secrets of Black Hollow, no matter the cost. The hunting hour had begun. Eli Mercer sat in the dimly lit diner, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The town of Black Hollow was as unwelcoming as its name suggested. The locals eyed him with suspicion, their conversations halting as he walked by. It was clear that outsiders were not welcome here. Eli had come to Black Hollow to investigate a series of mysterious disappearances that had plagued the town for decades. As a journalist, he had a nose for stories that others shied away from, and this one had all the makings of a great mystery. But the more he dug, the more he realized that this was no ordinary town. He pulled out the old diary he had found in his motel room. The leather cover was cracked and worn, and the pages were yellowed with age. The final entry read, "They come at midnight. Don't listen to the whispers." Eli shivered as he read the words. He had heard the whispers himself the night before. A soft, insistent murmur that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Eli decided to start by interviewing the locals. He approached the counter and asked the waitress, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, if she knew anything about the disappearances. "People around here don't like to talk about it," she said, her voice low. "But if you're looking for answers, you might want to talk to Old Man Harris. He lives out by the edge of the woods. He's been around longer than anyone and knows more about this town's history than anyone else." Eli thanked her and left the diner, heading towards the outskirts of town. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the deserted streets. As he walked, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Old Man Harris's house was a dilapidated shack surrounded by overgrown weeds. Eli knocked on the door, and after a long pause, it creaked open. The old man who stood before him was hunched and weathered, his eyes sharp and wary. "I'm Eli Mercer, a journalist," Eli said, extending his hand. "I'm investigating the disappearances in Black Hollow. I was told you might be able to help me." Harris eyed him for a moment before stepping aside to let him in. The inside of the house was cluttered with old newspapers and dusty furniture. Harris gestured for Eli to sit. "You're not the first to come poking around," Harris said, his voice raspy. "But I'll tell you what I know. This town has always been different. There's something in the woods, something that doesn't want to be found. People who go looking for it don't come back." "Some say it's a curse," Harris said. "Others think it's something more sinister. But whatever it is, it's real, and it's dangerous." As Eli left Harris's house, the sun had dipped below the horizon, and the town was shrouded in darkness. He made his way back to his motel room, his mind racing with the old man's words. He had a feeling that he was getting closer to the truth, but he also knew that the danger was real. That night, as he lay in bed, the whispers returned. They were louder this time, more insistent. Eli squeezed his eyes shut and tried to block them out, but they seemed to seep into his mind, filling his thoughts with a sense of dread. He got up and paced the room, trying to shake off the feeling of unease. As he passed the window, he caught a glimpse of something moving outside. He froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The whispers grew louder, and he realized with a jolt that they were coming from the direction of the woods. Summoning his courage, Eli grabbed his flashlight and headed outside. The night was eerily quiet, the only sound the crunch of gravel under his feet. He made his way towards the edge of the woods, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness. As he approached the tree line, the whispers grew louder, almost deafening. Eli's breath came in short gasps as he stepped into the woods. The trees loomed overhead, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers. He followed the sound of the whispers, his flashlight flickering as he went deeper into the forest. The air grew colder, and Eli shivered as he pressed on. He had to find out what was causing the whispers, even if it meant putting himself in danger. After what felt like hours, he came upon a clearing. In the center stood a dilapidated cabin, its windows dark and empty. The whispers seemed to be coming from inside. Eli approached cautiously, his flashlight illuminating the rotting wood of the cabin's exterior. He reached for the door, his hand trembling. As he pushed it open, the whispers stopped abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. Eli stepped inside, his flashlight casting long shadows on the walls. The cabin was empty save for a single chair in the center of the room. On the chair sat a tape recorder, its red light blinking. Eli approached it slowly, his heart pounding in his ears. He reached out and pressed play. A child's voice filled the room, soft and haunting. "You found me," it said. "Now you have to listen." Eli's blood ran cold as the voice continued. "They come at midnight. Don't listen to the whispers. They want to take you too." The tape recorder clicked off, and the room fell silent. Eli's heart pounded as he fled the cabin, the whispers following him into the night. He knew that he was in over his head, but he couldn't turn back now. He had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The hunt had only just begun. Eli Mercer felt the weight of the town's secrets pressing down on him as he walked through the narrow streets of Black Hollow. The whispers from the previous night still echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder that he was not alone in his quest for answers. Determined to uncover the truth, Eli decided to visit the town's library. It was an old building, its walls lined with dusty shelves filled with forgotten tomes. As he entered, the librarian, Mrs. Whitaker, greeted him with a wary smile. "Looking for something specific?" she asked, her eyes scanning him with curiosity. "I'm researching the disappearances," Eli replied, trying to sound casual. "I heard there might be some old records or diaries that could help." Mrs. Whitaker hesitated for a moment, before nodding. "Follow me," she said, leading him to a back room filled with stacks of old newspapers and journals. Eli spent hours poring over the documents, piecing together fragments of the town's dark history. He discovered that the disappearances had been happening for decades, each one shrouded in mystery and fear. The more he read, the more he realized that Black Hollow was a place where secrets festered and grew, feeding on the silence of its inhabitants. As the sun began to set, Eli stumbled upon a journal that caught his attention. It belonged to a man named Thomas Grayson, who had vanished 20 years ago. The entries were filled with desperate pleas for help, describing strange occurrences and eerie encounters. One entry stood out. The hollow man comes at midnight. He whispers my name, calling me to the woods. I can't resist. I must go." Eli's heart raced as he read the words. The hollow man, the same entity that Mara had mentioned. He knew he had to find out more. Leaving the library, Eli decided to visit Old Man Harris again. The old man had lived in Black Hollow his entire life and seemed to know more than he let on. Eli found him sitting on his porch, smoking a pipe and staring into the distance. "Back for more, eh?" Harris said with a chuckle. "I figured you wouldn't give up so easily." "I need to know about the hollow man," Eli said, his voice steady. "What is he? Why does he take people?" Harris sighed, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. "The hollow man is a curse, a punishment for the sins of this town. Long ago, the people of Black Hollow made a pact with him, sacrificing their own to ensure their prosperity. But the price was steep, and now he comes for us, one by one." Eli felt a chill run down his spine. "How do I stop him?" "You can't," Harris replied, shaking his head. "The only way to break the curse is to uncover the original sin that summoned him. But be warned, the truth is buried deep, and the town will do anything to keep it hidden." Determined to find the answers, Eli decided to explore the forest again. He knew it was dangerous, but he couldn't ignore the whispers that called to him. As he ventured deeper into the woods, the air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to come alive. Suddenly, he heard a rustling sound behind him. Turning around, he saw a figure emerging from the darkness. It was Mara, her eyes filled with urgency. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice trembling. "The hollow man is watching. He knows you're close to the truth." "I have to find out," Eli replied, his resolve unwavering. "I need to know what happened." Mara nodded, her expression somber. "Then follow me. There's something you need to see." She led him to a hidden clearing, where an old, decrepit cabin stood. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and the air was thick with an unsettling energy. Inside, Eli found a tape recorder playing a child's voice, repeating the words, "You found me." Eli's heart pounded as he listened to the recording. He knew he was on the brink of uncovering something monumental, something that could change everything. But as he reached for the tape recorder, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. The cabin seemed to close in around him, and he felt a presence watching him, waiting for him to make a move. Eli knew he had to be careful. The hollow man was near, and the truth was within his grasp. But the danger was real, and the stakes were higher than ever. As the night grew darker, Eli prepared himself for the next step in his journey. He knew that the answers he sought were hidden in the shadows, and he was ready to face whatever came next. The hunting hour had only just begun. Eli Mercer sat in his motel room, the diary open before him. The final entry, "They come at midnight. Don't listen to the whispers," echoed in his mind. He glanced at the clock, 11:45 p.m. The room was silent except for the occasional creak of the old building settling. Eli's investigation had led him to Black Hollow, a town shrouded in mystery and fear. The disappearances were just the tip of the iceberg. The locals were tight-lipped, and the town seemed frozen in time, as if it were stuck in a perpetual twilight. He had spent the day interviewing residents, but most were reluctant to speak. Old Man Harris, the town's unofficial historian, had been the most forthcoming. "The hollow man," he had whispered, his eyes darting around nervously. "He's the one behind it all." Eli had heard the legend before, a malevolent entity that demanded sacrifices in exchange for prosperity. But legends were just stories, right? He shook his head, trying to dispel the unease that had settled over him. The clock struck midnight, and Eli held his breath. The room remained silent. But then he heard it. A faint whispering, like the rustling of leaves in the wind. He stood up, his heart pounding, and moved to the window. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Eli," they seemed to call. "Eli." He opened the window and peered out into the darkness. The forest loomed in the distance, its trees swaying gently. The whispers seemed to be coming from there. Eli grabbed his flashlight and jacket, determined to find the source. The night was cold, and the air was thick with anticipation. Eli's footsteps crunched on the gravel as he made his way towards the forest. The whispers guided him, growing louder with each step. He felt a strange compulsion to follow them, as if they held the answers he sought. The forest was dense, the trees towering above him like silent sentinels. Eli's flashlight cast eerie shadows, and the whispers seemed to dance around him. He pushed forward, his breath visible in the cold air. Suddenly, he stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood a cabin, its windows dark and foreboding. Eli approached cautiously, his flashlight illuminating the worn wooden door. He reached out and turned the handle. It was unlocked. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior. Eli stepped inside, his flashlight sweeping the room. Symbols were carved into the walls, and an old tape recorder sat on a table. He pressed play, and a child's voice filled the room. Eli's flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. He felt a presence, something dark and malevolent. The room seemed to close in on him, and the whispers became a cacophony of voices. "Eli," they called. "Eli." He backed into a corner, his heart pounding. The symbols on the wall seemed to glow, and the tape recorder played on. Eli's mind raced. He had to get out. But how? Suddenly, the whispers stopped, and the room fell silent. Eli's flashlight flickered one last time before going out completely. He was plunged into darkness, the silence oppressive. Then, a voice, clear and distinct, spoke from the shadows. "You shouldn't have come here, Eli." Eli's breath caught in his throat. He felt a cold hand on his shoulder, and the room seemed to spin. The presence was overwhelming, and Eli knew he was in grave danger. The door creaked open, and Eli bolted for the exit. He stumbled into the night, the whispers chasing him. He ran through the forest, his flashlight forgotten. The trees seemed to close in on him, and the whispers grew louder. "Eli," they called. "Eli." He burst into the clearing, his breath ragged. The motel was in sight, and Eli sprinted towards it. He reached his room and slammed the door shut, his heart pounding. The whispers faded, and Eli collapsed onto the bed, exhausted. He lay there, his mind racing. The diary, the whispers, the cabin. It all seemed surreal. But Eli knew one thing for certain. Black Hollow was hiding something dark and dangerous, and he was determined to uncover the truth. As he drifted off to sleep, the final entry in the diary echoed in his mind. "They come at midnight. Don't listen to the whispers." Eli knew he couldn't ignore them. The hunt had begun, and there was no turning back. Eli Mercer sat at the edge of his motel bed, the weight of the town's secrets pressing down on him. The whispers had grown louder, more insistent, and the line between reality and nightmare was beginning to blur. He had to find answers, and he had to find them fast. The next morning, Eli decided to visit the town's library. It was an old building, its walls lined with dusty books and forgotten knowledge. The librarian, a frail woman with piercing blue eyes, watched him closely as he entered. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I'm looking for information on the town's history," Eli replied, "particularly anything related to the disappearances." The librarian's eyes narrowed. "Why would you want to dig up the past? Some things are better left buried." Eli felt a chill run down his spine. "I need to know the truth." She hesitated for a moment before leading him to a back room. "These are the archives," she said, unlocking the door. "Be careful what you find." Eli spent hours poring over old newspapers, journals, and records. The more he read, the more he realized that the town's history was steeped in darkness. There were stories of strange rituals, mysterious deaths, and a shadowy figure known only as the Hollow Man. As the sun began to set, Eli found a journal that caught his eye. It belonged to a man named Thomas Granger, who had lived in Black Hollow over a century ago. The entries were filled with ramblings about the Hollow Man and the pact the town had made. "They come at midnight," one entry read. "The whispers, they drive you mad. The Hollow Man demands a sacrifice." Eli's heart raced as he read the final entry. "I can hear them now. They're coming for me. God help us all." He closed the journal, his mind reeling. The pieces were starting to come together, but he needed more. He decided to visit Old Man Harris again, hoping the reclusive man might have more answers. As Eli approached Harris's cabin, he noticed the door was ajar. He knocked, but there was no response. Cautiously, he stepped inside. The cabin was in disarray, as if there had been a struggle. Papers were scattered across the floor, and the air was thick with the scent of fear. Eli called out, but the only response was the echo of his own voice. He found Harris in the back room, slumped over his desk. The old man was muttering to himself, his eyes wide with terror. "They're coming," Harris whispered. "The Hollow Man. He's coming for us all." Eli tried to get more information, but Harris was too far gone. "You're part of the pact now," she said. "The town's curse, it's claimed you." Eli's mind raced. There has to be a way to break it. Mara shook her head. "The only way to break the curse is to uncover the original sin that summoned the Hollow Man. But it's dangerous. The town will do anything to protect its secrets." Eli knew he had no choice. He had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. "Where do I start?" Mara hesitated before handing him a map. "There's a hidden chamber beneath the church. You'll find your answers there." Eli took the map, his heart pounding. "Thank you, Mara." "Be careful," she said. "The Hollow Man is always watching." Eli made his way to the church, the weight of the town's secrets pressing down on him. He found the hidden entrance and descended into the darkness. The chamber was filled with relics and symbols, the air thick with the scent of decay. Eli's flashlight flickered as he explored, his heart pounding in his chest. He found a mural depicting the Hollow Man, his eyes bleeding. Eli felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the truth. The town had made a pact with the Hollow Man, sacrificing their own to protect themselves. Eli knew he had to expose the truth, but he also knew the town would do anything to stop him. As he made his way back to the surface, he heard the whispers growing louder. "They're coming," he muttered to himself. "God help us all." Eli emerged from the church, the weight of the town's secrets pressing down on him. He knew he had to act fast. The Hollow Man was coming, and he had to be ready. The next few days were a blur of research and preparation. Eli gathered as much information as he could, piecing together the town's dark history. He knew he had to confront the Hollow Man, but he also knew he couldn't do it alone. He reached out to Lena, the survivor who had escaped the entity years ago. She was reluctant at first, but eventually agreed to help. Together they devised a plan to break the curse. They would confront the Hollow Man and uncover the original sin that had summoned him. It was a dangerous plan, but it was their only hope. As the night of the confrontation approached, Eli felt a sense of dread settle over him. He knew the risks, but he also knew he had no choice. The town's fate rested on his shoulders. The night was dark and stormy as Eli and Lena made their way to the forest. The whispers were louder than ever, and the air was thick with tension. They reached the cabin, and Eli felt a chill run down his spine. The Hollow Man was waiting for them. Eli took a deep breath and stepped inside. The cabin was dark and foreboding. The Hollow Man's eyes narrowed. "You think you can stop me?" Eli took a step forward. "We can break the curse. We know about the original sin." The Hollow Man let out a low, menacing laugh. "You think you can undo what has been done?" Eli stood his ground. "We have to try." The Hollow Man's eyes glowed brighter, and the whispers grew louder. Eli felt a wave of fear wash over him, but he forced himself to stay calm. "We know the truth," he repeated, "and we're not afraid." The Hollow Man let out a roar of anger, and the room seemed to shake. Eli felt a wave of fear wash over him, but he forced himself to stay calm. "We're not afraid," he repeated. The Hollow Man let out a final roar of anger, and the room went dark. Eli felt a wave of fear wash over him, but he forced himself to stay calm. When the lights came back on, the Hollow Man was gone. Eli felt a wave of relief wash over him, but he knew the fight was far from over. "We did it," Lena said, her voice filled with relief. Eli nodded. "But the town's secrets are still out there. We have to expose the truth." Lena nodded. "We'll do it together." Eli felt a sense of determination settle over him. The fight was far from over, but he knew he wasn't alone. Together, they would uncover the truth and break the curse once and for all. Eli Mercer stood at the entrance of the hidden chamber beneath the church, his heart pounding in his chest. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. Lena, the survivor who had escaped the Hollow Man years ago, stood beside him, her eyes wide with fear and determination. "Are you ready?" Lena whispered, her voice trembling. Eli nodded, gripping the flashlight tightly in his hand. "Let's do this." They stepped into the chamber, the beam of the flashlight cutting through the darkness. The walls were covered in ancient symbols, and the floor was littered with relics from the town's past. At the far end of the chamber, a mural depicted the hollow man in all his terrifying glory. As they approached the mural, Eli felt a chill run down his spine. The eyes of the hollow man seemed to follow them, and the air grew colder with each step. "This is where it all began," Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The original sin that summoned the hollow man." Eli's mind raced as he tried to piece together the puzzle. The town's dark pact, the sacrifices, the disappearances. It all led back to this chamber. He knew that to break the curse, he had to uncover the truth. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook, and the symbols on the walls began to glow. Eli and Lena exchanged a terrified glance as the chamber seemed to come alive. "He's here," Lena said, her voice trembling. "The hollow man is here." Eli's heart raced as he scanned the chamber, searching for any sign of the entity. The air grew colder, and the whispers grew louder, echoing through the chamber. "You cannot escape," the whispers hissed. "You are marked." Eli felt a burning sensation on his chest, and he knew that the mark had appeared. He was now a target, just like the others who had vanished. "We have to find the original sin," Lena said, her voice urgent. "It's the only way to break the curse." Eli nodded, his mind racing as he tried to think of where to start. The mural, the relics, the symbols, they all held clues. He approached the mural, his flashlight illuminating the terrifying image of the hollow man. As he studied the mural, he noticed a small inscription at the bottom. It was written in an ancient language, but Eli recognized the symbols from his research. "It's a riddle," Eli said, his voice filled with determination. "We have to solve it." Lena joined him, her eyes scanning the inscription. "What does it say?" Eli took a deep breath and began to translate the symbols. "To break the curse, you must uncover the original sin. The child sacrificed to stop the plague holds the key. Free the spirit, and the hollow man will be no more." Lena's eyes—
"We have to go back to the forest," Eli said, his voice filled with determination. "That's where we'll find the spirit." Lena nodded, her eyes filled with fear and hope. "Let's go." They turned and hurried out of the chamber, the whispers growing louder behind them. As they emerged from the church, Eli felt a sense of urgency. Time was running out, and the hollow man was growing stronger. They raced through the town, the cold night air biting at their skin. The forest loomed ahead, dark and foreboding. Eli's heart pounded in his chest as they entered the woods, the whispers guiding them deeper into the darkness. "We're close," Lena said, her voice trembling. "I can feel it." Eli nodded, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The trees seemed to close in around them, and the air grew colder with each step. Suddenly, they reached a clearing, and Eli's flashlight illuminated a small grave. The inscription on the headstone read, "The child who was sacrificed to stop the plague." Eli's heart raced as he approached the grave. "This is it. This is where we'll find the spirit." Lena nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "We have to free the spirit. It's the only way to break the curse." Eli took a deep breath and knelt beside the grave. He began to dig, his hands trembling as he unearthed the soil. The whispers grew louder, and the air grew colder. Finally, Eli uncovered a small, ancient box. He opened it, revealing a delicate, glowing orb, the spirit of the sacrificed child. "We found it," Eli said, his voice filled with hope. "We found the spirit." Lena's eyes filled with tears as she reached out to touch the orb. "We have to free it. It's the only way." Eli nodded, his heart filled with determination. He held the orb in his hands and whispered a prayer, asking for the spirit to be freed. The orb began to glow brighter, and the whispers grew louder. Suddenly, the air grew warm, and the forest seemed to come alive. The spirit of the child emerged from the orb, its eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," it whispered. "You have freed me." Eli felt a sense of relief wash over him. "The curse is broken. The Hollow Man will be no more." Lena nodded, her eyes filled with hope. "We did it. We broke the curse." As the spirit disappeared into the night, Eli and Lena felt a sense of peace. The town of Black Hollow was free from the darkness that had plagued it for so long. But as they turned to leave the forest, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching them. The Hollow Man may be gone. Eli and Lena emerged from the hidden chamber, their hearts pounding with the adrenaline of their discovery. The spirit of the sacrificed child had been freed, and they believed the curse was finally broken. The town of Black Hollow seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, as if a heavy weight had been lifted. But as they walked back to the motel, the air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to lengthen. Eli couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Lena, too, felt the eerie presence, her eyes darting nervously around. "Do you think it's really over?" Lena asked, her voice trembling. Eli wanted to reassure her, but the whispers in the wind told a different story. They reached the motel, and Eli locked the door behind them. The room felt safe, but the sense of unease lingered. That night, Eli dreamed of the forest again. He was running, the trees closing in around him, the whispers growing louder. He woke with a start, drenched in sweat. Lena was sitting by the window, staring out into the darkness. "I heard them," she said softly, "the whispers." Eli joined her at the window, peering into the night. The forest loomed ominously, and the whispers seemed to call to them. They knew they couldn't ignore it. The Hollow Man was still out there, waiting. The next day, they decided to confront the entity once and for all. Armed with the knowledge of the town's dark past, they ventured into the forest. The path seemed to twist and turn, leading them deeper into the heart of the woods. As they walked, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Eli felt a chill run down his spine. The trees seemed to close in around them, and the air grew thick with tension. They reached the cabin, the door creaking open as if inviting them in. Inside, the symbols on the walls seemed to glow with an eerie light. The tape recorder was still there, playing the child's voice. "You found me," it said, "but you can't escape." Eli and Lena exchanged a glance, their resolve hardening. They knew they had to face the Hollow Man. The whispers grew louder, and the room seemed to pulse with a dark energy. Suddenly, the Hollow Man appeared, his form shifting and twisting. He was a shadow, a nightmare made flesh. Eli felt a wave of fear wash over him, but he stood his ground. "You can't have us," Eli said, his voice steady. "We know the truth." The Hollow Man laughed, a sound that sent chills down their spines. "The truth is just the beginning," he said. "You can't escape your fate." Eli and Lena braced themselves, ready to fight. The room seemed to close in around them, the shadows growing darker. The Hollow Man lunged, and they fought back with everything they had. The battle was fierce, the air crackling with energy. Eli felt the mark on his chest burn, but he pushed through the pain. Lena fought with a strength he hadn't seen before. Finally, with a burst of light, the Hollow Man was defeated. The room fell silent, the shadows retreating. Eli and Lena stood there, breathing heavily, their hearts pounding. They had won, but the victory felt hollow. The whispers were gone, but the sense of unease remained. They knew the town's dark past would never truly be erased. As they walked back to the motel, Eli felt a sense of closure. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the memory of the Hollow Man would linger, a reminder of the town's haunted history.